There you
Good
go.
morning, gentlemen. Alex and Tommy, thank you so much for joining me today. It means a lot to be able to talk to you both. I am located here in Fresno, so Yosemite is very close to us. I remember watching Free Solo, then one of our trips there, looking up, going, absolutely not, absolutely not. So it's great to be able to get to talk to you now on the Devil's Climb and to hear about that journey in particular. Tell me, how excited are you both to be able to share this really, really personal experience now with the world?
I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, we Alex and I get to go on these like personal trips and be with some of the best filmers in the world. And this film crew was probably the best ever compiled for this kind of thing. And to show that to the world is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the scenery that we rode through, the adventure that we went through. I mean, I think this is the kind of story that you want to see on television. It's just like if you're going to be showing parts of the world on TV, you may as well show the most beautiful parts of the world and the most underappreciated parts of the world, the places that people don't really see otherwise, like remote Alaska. Kind of like, it's the perfect thing for television.
Yeah, it was really thrilling, actually. I found myself almost at the edge of my seat at some point because, I mean, it's a very difficult thing. It had what you guys did here had not been done before, which really, the logistics of it just boggled my mind. What kind of preparation do you have with cameramen, with setting up your own gear and things like that to be able to make a documentary like this possible?
Well, I was about to joke that we just totally winged it, just you just go for it and find out what happens. But no, the reality is that the camera crew in particular has to be super meticulous about the gear and the packing and their plan. But for me and Tommy, we did to some extent just go on an adventure and sort it out as we went. I mean, the trip was 2 months long, and so we had a lot of time as we went to sort of learn and adapt and like make our plan as we go. But
Yeah, like for instance, the bike journey part of it, literally what we did is I typed Devil's Thumb into Google bike direction or into Google and hit the bike directions button. And then we sort of tweaked it a little bit based on where we wanted to climb. But, day 3 and 4, we were like questing through the southern Wyoming desert on like cattle trails, being like, who has biked here? Like there was parts of the trip that were really well planned, but other parts where we were just fully winging it, which was sort of by design. Like in some ways you want unexpected things to happen because it makes the trip more memorable.
Yeah, yeah, it's part of that adventure aspect of it, of course. With that said, I mean, even in the documentary, we see some moments where you're like, well, actually, now that we're here, we're gonna go this way, and maybe even some hesitation from one of you. What kind of things can you control to prepare to make sure that when these moments arrive, you're ready for them, even if you're having to pivot at the last moment?
Well, I think what you're describing is that throughout the trip, there were definitely moments where, we might have a plan, we might have an idea of what we want to do, but then you're met with physical conditions. Like basically your plan runs into reality where you see the wall or you see whatever, and you're like, oh, so much for the plan. And so I mean, and I think you see it in the film, but we trained the whole time. We were, trying to stay fit for rock climbing. We climbed as much as we could. We went to every climbing gym that we passed along the way, which wasn't that many, but we used everything we could. And so we tried to stay in the best possible conditions so that we would be able to do whatever we ran into when we got there. But then the reality is always just that you have to you have to take what nature gives you. When you show up in some remote location and the wall looks too forbidding, then you're like, yeah, you know what? We'll climb a different wall. That's fine.
Yeah, that's one thing that struck me about this trip specifically is we were making a Nat Geo film and the Nat Geo producers were taking a lot of risk on us. Like for instance, the Devil's Thumb is in Tongass National Forest. It's like or is in a rainforest. It's a little rainforest where the weather is terrible all the time. Like there was a good chance we were going to get to the mountain and it was just going to be like in clouds and in snow the whole time and we weren't even going to be able to climb it. And so the like from a production standpoint, the network basically has to be willing to take quite a bit of risk to put all this effort behind something that might not turn out the way they wanted it to. Luckily, this trip turned out the way that we wanted it to.
Yeah, we had incredible weather, but if the weather had been bad, we could have just made a great cycling movie. Like who needs the climbing? It's just sitting in base camp in the rain.
Well, I'm glad it all worked out because it made for an amazing documentary. one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys is how you embrace fear, because obviously, it doesn't matter how experienced you are. Even in the movie, you guys say these are some very scary moments, but you don't let that stop you. I mean, fear can sometimes be very crippling. It can be very doubt provoking, and it can stop a lot of people in their tracks. But you guys always find a way around it. And I wanted to ask you, how do you guys embrace fear and maybe even use that to your advantage during your climbs?
I don't think we necessarily use it to our advantage, but I do think that rock climbing is inherently scary. And I think the two of us have spent basically our entire lives being scared consistently, like getting scared all the time, either in big ways or small ways. But there's just, I mean, you just manage fear a lot as a climber. You're constantly doing things where you're like, oh, this seems a little sketchy. Like, how do I make this feel better? Like, how do I make this as safe as possible so that it's like less scary? And I think that when you have a lot of scary experiences, you just get better at managing fear.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that has brought Alec, or at least originally brought Alex and I together as a partnership, is we both manage fear more or less similarly. Like we both have experiences where we go on trips with other people, and they're just like, "Oh dear, we're gonna die. We need to go down right now," and it's sort of crippling. With Alex and I think we've both figured out ways, probably through experience more than anything else, to kind of like have the danger and the fear bring out our best and even bring out humor at times. And yeah, that's one of the magical parts about about climbing with Alex, is we kind of share that.
And
So what Tommy was just saying, I think actually one of the things that's made our partnership so great in climbing, and this relates to managing fear, but that both of us are always willing to try until we can't anymore. Like you may as well just do your best until you're physically unable to because of the weather or because conditions or whatever. But like always give it your best shot. And I was just thinking about it. I was thinking about, when you're talking about managing fear in everyday life and this idea of like always giving it your best until you absolutely can't. So this morning, I mean, the fact that we're chatting right now is me giving it my best because both my young daughters have stomach bugs, and I basically spent the whole night with diarrhea and vomiting, and it was sort of like, oh, I'm wrecked. But then this morning, I was kind of like, well, I can try to eat a piece of toast, and I'll just try to do interviews and chat with people. And if I fail, that's fine. Like if I have to just run out the door in a minute to go to the bathroom, like that's fine. But I'm just gonna give it my best until I fail. So and I know that's kind of a silly example, but it is, it's kind of like this, it's the climbing life just like bleeding over into regular life.
oh, no,
Yeah,
really, go ahead. Sorry.
I just say there's so many things in climbing too that seem scary versus things that actually could kill you, and you really have to get good at like decide, figuring out what you're involved in right now. And I think so much of the time it just seems scary, whereas you're not actually on the like razor's edge of like dying that often.
Yeah, well, I hope your daughters get better soon because I know what that's like. So, one of the things I want to ask you, just because I am in the area, how have all your climbs, maybe in Yosemite, in the Central Valley, not Valley because that's the mountains. I'm in the valley. How those have any moments of that, maybe in free solo? Maybe Tommy, I know you kind of had a bad experience there that kind of led to this journey also. How that prepare you for the Devil's Thumb
Well, I
climb?
mean, everything we've climbed together in Yosemite is perfect preparation for something like the Devil's Thumb, just because it's just another giant granite big wall. And Yosemite has the best granite big walls on Earth, I think. I mean, both of us have spent so much time in Yosemite, and it really is the ultimate training ground.
Yeah, and for me, experiences like Kyrgyzstan, like that kind of thing is so much adversity that it changes your perception of what is pain, what is fear, what you're capable of, and allows trips like the Devil's Climb to happen. Whereas most people would look at that climb and be like, that's going to be just too much. Whereas we can look at that, and since we've been through so much, be like, I think this is something we can do.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that we got to see this, in the film. I thought it was great to watch your guys' journey. Um, Alex, I gotta ask you, you seemed actually this is kind of for both of you in both ways, helping each other out because you guys have very distinct personalities, but you guys work very, very well together. And then you also have the challenge of kind of helping Tommy kind of regain some of that trust, and you can see that as you go along that it just gets higher and higher. But Alex, you seem to be a little bit more patient, and then Tommy's very aware of that. And I really like the narrative of that partnership of helping each other out and really being able to achieve something big. What was that like for you guys to watch that back on this documentary?
Well, I think when we watched it in the film, we were like, "Oh, it's so heartening, it's so wonderful." But I mean, the thing is, Tommy was patient with me on the bicycle. I was a much worse cyclist going into this, and so I struggled on the bike ride. But then in the mountains, I'd been spending the last, well, I'm just climbing full time like that, and Tommy had been injured and spent a couple years out, and so um, I feel like we both sort of supported each other through this. I mean, obviously Tommy was rehabbing an injury, but it was a big journey for me as well, and we were both just doing our best the whole way.
Yeah, and the film, that's the like element that they successfully brought out in the edit of the film that I was very, very excited about. Like that kind of partnership. They did a great job of telling that part of it, in the way that it felt on the actual journey. So that's success.
Well, I am very excited that I got to talk to you both. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to virtually meet you. Thank you for sharing your experience with me and for the film. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks, Manny.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Pleasure.